Okay, guys, today we are going to make some chicken soup. We're going to go back to basics. Cold weather's coming. I want everybody to stay healthy. Let's make some soup. This is the most basic, simple soup you can make. So, I added a couple extra chicken thighs and a whole chicken, only because we use the chicken meat to then make another meal, typically enchiladas or something like that. So we used a whole bag of celery, just regular celery. You could use organic celery. We also put in 3 onions, 1 pound of peeled carrots, and a parsnip, which is actually optional. The parsnip root is peeled, and I use the parsley to actually season the soup at the end. So a little bit of sea salt, my secret ingredient, some tarragon. We're going to make some dumplings or knedle in the soup, so you're going to need some cream of wheat. And for the cream of wheat, you're going to need a stick of butter. And what I didn't show you guys is 1 egg. So make sure that butter is room temperature. So first things first, we're going to go ahead and preheat the pot. And we're going to go ahead and season up the chicken. I want it browned just slightly. You don't want to over brown it, which I actually ended up doing in this video. The soup still turned out great, but the meat was browned a little bit more than I usually would. The only difference is the soup turns out to be, instead of like a nice golden color, it'll actually be a little bit more of a brown color. It's still delicious, but it's up to your taste. So I salt the meat, and I also add the tarragon at this point. You want to get that tarragon, you want to get some heat on it, and if you can, fry it up a little bit to really get the flavor out. I forgot to add the neck and the giblets, so that went in. And now, one of the keys to making a really good soup is obviously you gotta pay attention to it, but you gotta mix it. If you mix the soup, it makes it so much better. So all the meat's been browned. I'm making a little space in the pan here, and I'm going to go ahead and add the onions. And as you can see, I took the time to chop the vegetables into small pieces, and there's 2 reasons for that. Number one, when I make soup this way, the flavor really comes out when the vegetables are chopped. And number two, if you cook the meat a little bit less, you could then serve the soup with all the vegetables in it. You take the meat out, of course, you pull some of the chicken off, you put it back into the soup, and then you serve it whole, and it really makes a hearty soup. It's actually a full meal. You don't have to eat anything other than that. So now I've browned off the onions, and I'm going to go ahead and throw in all the rest of the vegetables. This is where my chicken got a little bit too brown. I wasn't mixing it quite enough, and I noticed one of the pieces. I'm in the process of remodeling my house, and I've got a electric stove right now. It's going to be converted to a gas, and I got to tell you, I feel for any of you who have an electric stove. They are terrible. So you noticed I salted the meat, and then I just salted the vegetables. Don't be worried about oversalting your soup. Salt in moderation here, but if you oversalt the soup, I've got a trick for you as well. Just add a whole potato, peeled potato, to your soup, and before it cooks all the way through, take it out, and it will reduce the salt. So I'm warming up a little bit of water on the side there. You can see I'm just getting it to room temperature. That way the soup starts boiling. And I'm adding about 5 liters of water. This pot doesn't look that big, but let me tell you, this thing's a beast. It could really hold a ton of water. So that's about a gallon and a quarter, give or take, of water. So we're gonna make quite a bit of broth here. Now, this cooks for about 45 minutes to an hour. As soon as it comes up to a boil, you want to skim off all the fat and the gook that comes off the top there. That's the chicken fat, and the vegetables have been peeled, so I don't think it's any wax or anything like that. It's just basically gook, and it's not very pleasant, nor is it tasty. So toss that out. Now, the tip here, constantly mix your soup. And I don't know why, but when I chop the veggies up small, of course they're going to release more flavor, but mixing the soup also makes a huge difference. And I got to tell you, I've been making soup for over 20 years. I just keep it as basic as possible. I don't add a bunch of other stuff to it, and it always turns out great. So here you could see the meat is pretty much fall off the bone tender, and it's now time to pull the meat out. So I always like to put it in some sort of a strainer and then move it off to the side. We take the chicken, we peel the skin off of it, we pull the bones out of it, and then we'll make enchiladas or chicken salad or all sorts of good stuff. Don't throw this meat away. This meat in particular, lecho, is fantastic as well. If you just want to eat it whole, it is delicious. So what's left now in the pot is basically all the vegetables. If you cooked it a little bit less, you could throw some noodles in there and serve it whole. But I cooked this a little bit more because I just wanted a nice clean broth. So I set up 2 strainers, a fine strainer and a coarse strainer, and I made a bit of a mess. But what are you going to do? So I strained out all the vegetables. The vegetables, by the way, don't throw those away. If you blend those up in a blender and add a little bit of sour cream and some other stuff, you can make a really nice sauce for the kids if they're for tortellini or something like that. So, soup's done. You could have the soup whole just like that, or you could add noodles to it. In this case, we're going to make some knedle. So, knedle are basically cream of wheat, butter, and egg. And so my butter is now room temperature. I crack an egg in there, and I start mixing and mixing and mixing. Takes quite some time. Now, I wanted to show you guys approximately, this is approximately 2 cups of cream of wheat. And I put it in the small bowl so you can kind of get an idea of how much cream of wheat and butter I'm putting in there. Normally, I put this in a little bit larger stainless steel bowl, and that way it's easier to mix and I'm not making a mess. You can see here I'm constantly pulling bits off the cutting board and putting it back in and remixing it. So use a bigger bowl when you're doing this. And honestly, I didn't add enough cream of wheat. I probably should have put a little bit more in. I added some tarragon. Tarragon, for whatever reason, is the only herb that I use in soup, and for whatever reason, it really enhances the flavor of the soup. I know other people will put all sorts of other stuff, bay leaves and whatever, but for me, salt, pepper. Actually, I'm sorry, salt. I don't even put pepper. Salt and tarragon, and that's it. And parsley at the end, but that's only for color. It's not really for flavor. So you can see here the mix is getting a little stiff, and I fold it over a few times. And then what you do is you put that in the fridge for just a few minutes to cool it off. Here I'm warming up my spoons, and typically you want to use teaspoons. In this case, I use tablespoons because I wanted some bigger knedle. And you fold them over, so you can see I'm folding it over, pulling it, folding it over, pulling it. It almost makes a triangular football-shaped dumpling. And you drop those in, and you got to be careful. See how the soup is it's boiling, but just at a simmer. It's not a hard boil here. And you're dropping these in one at a time. One time I was doing this, and they were a little bit dense, and they stuck to the bottom, and it was boiling too hard, and it just made a complete and total mess. So go nice and slow, and you can see they're gonna start popping up here in just a few seconds. And once they pop up, you know that they're almost done. There you go. You can see a few of them are coming up. So the making of these little dumplings does take a little bit of time, but this is my kids' favorite soup, and the first soup of the season. It's been so hot this summer, I haven't made any soup. They were just so happy that I was making it. So as the dumplings, the knedle, start to float to the top, you're going to want to let this simmer for, I'd say, at least another 10-15 minutes on a very, very low heat. You could even put the lid back on it and just turn it off and let it sit. I use cast iron pots, so they stay hot for quite a long time. But yeah, it takes a few minutes here, and I'm sorry, I know I should have edited this part out, but what are you gonna do? I wanted to show you guys how to flip those in there. So last one here, finally. So here it is, guys. Finished product, soup. Make it once a week. It's healthy, it's delicious. Enjoy.